Silly season dominoes continue to fall in NASCAR as Jimmie Johnson will drive full-time for Alpha Prime Racing in 2023, and it sounds like Kaulig Racing may enter a third part-time entry in 2023. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to start by talking about Michigan Speedway as they have a new logo. This logo looks really solid in my opinion. I like the changes to the logo. Granted, I think SMI's logos need to be changed a little bit more frequently, but I think this looks really solid. I do like the logo. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Arrow McLaren SP. As there is going to be a name change to Arrow McLaren SP, as they're now just going to be referred to being called Arrow McLaren. Now, one thing you know is that the Schmidt-Peterson name is being dropped, but they will still be part of the Arrow McLaren organization. I just think it will be a little bit more cleaner and a little bit of a shorter name, which I think makes a lot of sense in my opinion. So I think it's overall a really good decision, and massive changes going on Arrow McLaren going into 2023. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about F1 director changes. As in the last couple of days, there's been a lot of announcements in regards to F1 director changes. So first on Monday, it was announced that Host Capito will be leaving Williams. Then yesterday, we had a lot of plethora of changes. So Fred Vassar is leaving Alfa Romeo, but he'll be moving over to work at Ferrari. Andrea Stella will be moving over and working at McLaren, and Andrea Seidel will be moving over to work at Alfa Romeo. A lot of big changes. Hopefully, this will help every single organization going into 2023 and help improve their performance as they look to improve heading into 2023 and help all the organizations improve. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the 6 hours of Qatar. As it was announced on Monday that the FIA World Endurance Championship has signed a 6-year deal to race in Qatar starting in 2024. Now, look, I know a lot of people have controversies around racing Qatar with it being a different country, but I will say this, as good as going to be more race on the World Endurance Championship. I don't think it's going to replace a race, if I'm not mistaken, but I think it's good to see that there is going to be a new race on the schedule, whether we agree with where it's at or not. I do like there's going to be a new race on the schedule, and hopefully the race will be really good over the next 6 years. And, of course, money's a big factor. Money talks on everything. So that's a big reason why they're going into Qatar. Whether we agree with it or not, they'll be racing Qatar in 2023 and 2024. And we'll see what happens heading into 2024. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Joe Gibbs Racing. As a couple days ago, Joe Gibbs Racing broke the internet and Twitter, as they released an electric car and showed an electric car doing practice pit stops. This got a lot of controversy on Twitter, and even people like Jason Trinchero, who don't even work at Joe Gibbs Racing, he basically responded saying that teams like Team Penske have had electric cars for the last decade, and no one complained then. And he's absolutely correct. Look, do I want NASCAR to go fully electric with their main series? No. But I think eventually in the next 15, 20 years, we're going to see fully electric Cup Series probably, and I'll explain why. The manufacturers are playing a role right now into basically decisions in NASCAR. If they want to stay around long term, if you want these manufacturers to stay around long term, you're going to have to play by the manufacturer's rules, whether we agree with it or not. I understand also at the moment it saves teams money and saves money when it comes because they burn less fuel. So it saves the teams a lot of money. Plus, it's just pit stop practice. So I get why people are frustrated, and I understand that because I don't want NASCAR to go fully electric, but I think the backlash was a little bit too extreme and a little bit crazy. In my eyes, I think it's a little bit frustrating that people got really upset about it, in my opinion. I don't agree with people being upset, but that is just my honest opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about North Wilkesboro. Now, yesterday at North Wilkesboro, they had an update on the renovation progress. They've already had a lot of changes over at North Wilkesboro Speedway. And one thing that was actually reported by, I believe it was Matt Weaver, that they basically will keep a lot of the signage from the Winston Cup era, and the RJ Reynolds signage is going to be up for the homage of the track, and there's still a lot of changes to be made, and they're currently working on getting the safer barriers built as we speak at the moment. North Wilkesboro, of course, will be returning in 2023 to host the NASCAR Cup Series All-Star Race and also host the Camp World Truck Series race as well. It's incredible to see a lot of the changes that are going on in North Wilkesboro at the moment. The plan is, as Steve Swift said, who's really been behind this project, the plan is for them to basically have monthly updates on the renovations of the track, and we'll probably continue updating as time goes on. Honestly, I think this is really, really huge for the sport overall as a whole, and North Wilkesboro is coming back. Hopefully the racing is really, really going to go there, because I think that's going to play a big role in keeping the track around long term. And honestly, love the fact that they are continuing to make changes and updates, because I think revealing whatever updates they're doing is huge, and really excited to see all the changes that are coming to North Wilkesboro in the future. I think it's really, really big for the sport, in my opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Rockingham Speedway. As it was reported, I believe, on Monday, or actually yesterday, that the repave at Rockingham Speedway is officially complete. Man, the repave got done really, really quick, because I think they started the repave in early November or late October, if I'm not mistaken. So they already got this repave done in a very short period of time. And that was the first goal for the GM of Rockingham. What they said is the first goal was getting the track repaved. Now, the big question is what is the plan for Rockingham Speedway going forward? Because one of the things is they do want to host NASCAR Cup Series race again. Now, the NASCAR Cup Series has not raced there since 2004, but Rockingham has hosted NASCAR races, but it hasn't been since 2013. So it's been a very, very long time. You also think about the fact there's a lot of tracks in the North Carolina area. You've got North Wilkesboro returning. You've got Charlotte on the schedule. You've got a lot of other tracks that are really close there, including Darlington as well. I could see Rockingham in the future, maybe 2024, hosting an All-Star race, but I don't see it getting a points-paying race. Maybe you're going to have to wait a lot longer, though, for that to happen. But I hope there is a plan in the background for Rockingham Speedway, and that they can figure something out and basically start like a renovation lane. Because with North Wilkesboro, they had a plan for the last 2 years. Rockingham really doesn't have a plan right now at the moment. But I do want to see them come back, NASCAR come back to Rockingham Speedway in the future. So I really do hope they have a plan going forward so that we can get some racing at the track in the future and host NASCAR racing. So we'll see what happens long term. But I love the fact they're giving us some updates to what is going on currently at the moment. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Jimmie Johnson. Now, in the last day or two, we've gotten a little bit of news around Jimmie Johnson. So first, Petty GMS put out a tweet showing what number do you think that Jimmie Johnson is going to have. Then later in the day yesterday, Jimmie Johnson was getting his seat fitted. He was wearing Eric Jones' fire suit, getting his seat fitted. But he was getting his seat fitted as he was getting into the Petty GMS car. Now, later that day, Bob Pockers answered a question from somebody asking, when will the plans for Jimmie Johnson be revealed? Well, the reveal is expected sometime in the next 2 to 3 weeks, probably in the second or third week of January, is the plan for them to reveal Jimmie Johnson's 2023 plans. But it does sound like we kind of do know a little bit potentially how many races they're going to run. According to when Eric Easep was interviewing Richard Petty said that the plan right now is for Jimmie to run 5 races, maybe in 2023, maybe it will be more, but right now 5 races is the current plan for 2023. The other big question is, what is going to be sponsors and what is going to be the number? The number I predict is going to be 44. It would make a lot of sense. 42 is what driven by Noah Gragson, 43 driven by Eric Jones. I would think Jimmie Johnson will drive the 44. And then the other thing is, I think Carvana is going to sponsor Jimmie Johnson in those races as well, considering Carvana has major branding with the Petty brand, well, with Jimmie Johnson. I think it will make a lot of sense for Carvana to sponsor Jimmie Johnson. That being said, though, we're going to get more details in the not-so-distant future in regards to that, but it sounds like we're not too far away from knowing the plans for Jimmie Johnson. In about a month, we're probably going to know what's going on with Jimmie Johnson heading into 2023. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Hulman-Friesen Racing. Now, on Monday evening, Stuart Friesen went on Sirius 7 NASCAR Radio on the late night drive and basically talked about a lot of the plans for 2023. So there were 3 things he basically confirmed. Now, obviously, we know that Stuart Friesen, he's returning to the 52 truck next year. He confirmed that Jessica Friesen will race at Bristol Dirt. Now, it's not unconfirmed if she'll run a 3rd truck or the 2nd truck, 62 truck. But she'll run at Bristol Dirt. She's ran the last couple years in the dirt races that they've ran, so she'll be likely in that race as well. They're also revealed that there's likely going to be a new sponsor at Hulman-Friesen Racing. They're revealed sometime in 2023. Unclear what that sponsor is, but there will be a new sponsor as well. And something big they are revealed, and the biggest news of all, is that they are planning to have lane rigs hoping to be full-time in 2023. Now, they're going to try to get as much funding as possible. If they can get the funding for laying rigs, he'll run full-time. If they can't get the full funding, he'll run as many races as possible, which is something that I've been indicated and told in the last 2 weeks as well, that this is something that has been in the cards for the last few weeks. Lane Riggs, a very talented up-and-coming driver, ran a couple races last year in the Camp World Truck Series and had a really big standout performance at Phoenix before actually unfortunately getting involved in a wreck. But Lane Riggs before that was up front competing for the lead and actually led a couple laps, which is extremely impressive for a guy who's only had a few starts and could have won an IRP as well if his strategy had gone right. Hulman-Friesen really set themselves up for the future. I think the fact that they're going to have that 62 truck around for probably most of the year, I think is really, really exciting news as a whole. And there's just a lot of excitement building around the Hulman-Friesen Racing organization as we speak at the moment. So really exciting news for sure in regards to that. When it comes to Hulman-Friesen Racing, things are really setting themselves up for a really awesome future, and glad to see that there are big changes coming to the Hulman-Friesen Racing organization heading in 2023. Really exciting news, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Brett Moffitt. As it was announced on Monday morning that AM Racing has announced their 2023 plans for the NASCAR Xfinity Series. And Brett Moffitt is going to drive the number 25 full-time in Xfinity Series for AM Racing in 2023. It was also announced on Monday that AM Racing has formed an alliance with Ford and Stewart-Haas Racing. They'll have a technical alliance with that organization heading into 2023. And AM Racing will also be racing ARCA and trucks, and they will also be Ford organizations as well. This is huge for a lot of reasons. First, let's talk about AM Racing going to Ford. Right now in Xfinity, there's not a lot of organizations that have Ford backing. Stewart-Haas Racing, SS Greenlight Racing are two of the only really big organizations that have Ford backing. So this is really huge for Ford's development. Another big thing is I think it will help their performance a little bit as well. They're partnering up with Stewart-Haas Racing. Now let's talk about Brett Moffitt driving this car. This is a fantastic opportunity for Brett Moffitt. Brett Moffitt is one of the most talented drivers. It really hasn't been full-time until now. I think he's going to get the best out of that equipment heading into 2023. He's a really, really good and a really awesome talent. And I know a lot of people have their opinions on Brett Moffitt, and we know that he's not been the greatest with sponsorship in the past. But Brett Moffitt is still a really good driver and can get the best out of equipment. I remember last year, I think it was in Knoxville, or a couple years ago in Knoxville, where he's up front contending for the lead and actually contending for the win with the team. And he's been able to contend in top 10s in the truck series as well. My prediction for Brett Moffitt going into 2023, I don't think he makes the playoffs next year because it is a new organization, but I think Brett Moffitt will be contending for a lot of top 10s next year and even some top 15s. It will be a consistent top 20 driver throughout the season in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. I think he's going to do a really awesome job with AM Racing next year. I think he's going to do an awesome job, and I cannot wait to see what Brett Moffitt's going to do in 2023. Really exciting news for the team, and I think Brett Moffitt, like I said, is going to have a really strong year with AM Racing. I think he runs up front through the whole entire 2023 season, and I think he'll be a contender, be a playoff contender. I don't think he makes the playoffs, but I think he'll be a contender in a lot of races next year, and you've got to be excited if you're a Brett Moffitt fan heading into 2023. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Fox Sports. Now, it was reported yesterday by Adam Stern that, according to him, Michael Moffitt, who's based in executive Fox Sports, he says we do 90% of our viewership and 90% of our ad sales from Labor Day weekend through Super Bowl Sunday. We really need something post-Super Bowl that keeps us relevant. The USFL and college basketball is part of that, but the biggest part is NASCAR. Now, obviously, NASCAR does take up a major part of Fox's network in the spring and the early summers of each year. Now, one thing I do want to say about this is Fox Sports coverage. Boy, oh boy, they need to have an overhaul with Fox Sports' coverage. The coverage of Fox Sports in the last couple of years, I think is really dwindled. I think a lot of it has been since the COVID pandemic. I think that's been a big thing that really played a factor into Fox Sports' coverage really taking a downhill spiral. Now, I will say near the end of 2022, though, at least on the Cup and Xfinity side of things, they were really starting to improve and show a lot of improvement. But they need to continue improvement and stop with the comedic skits and take the sport a little bit seriously. You can have fun with the shows. There's no doubt about that. And Fox always had some sort of comedy. But the difference between now and what they were like in 2002, 2003 is that Fox Sports back in the day, while they had a lot of fun moments, their coverage was still really, really good. I think Fox's coverage has generally dwindled, and I think that could play a role in a lot of things. Now, I will say one thing, though, is I do think if Fox Sports can fix some of the issues, that they can be in really great shape, because here's the thing. They did a bad job explaining next-gen car. It took until the NBC portion here for them to get the next-gen car out, and I think NBC overall did a much better job in their coverage this year than Fox this year. I think NBC was just night and day better than Fox. Not saying Fox was completely terrible. I think they had their best coverage near the end of the season, especially with them keeping the consistency of the booth. But I will say that they do need to make some changes going into 2023, and hopefully they do make those executive changes going into 2023 to fix their problems. Because let's be honest, Fox had a lot of problems this year and a lot of issues that need to be resolved going into 2023, and hopefully they are going to fix those changes. Stop with the comedic sketches, stop with the comedic stuff, and I think they need to have one consistent person in the booth. I know they're going to do basically the rotation again in 2023, but they need to figure out what they're going to do going in the future, because they're probably going to be around the next TV deal, which is really, really frustrating. We'll see what happens, though, and honestly, I hope they can make those executive changes to fix those problems heading into 2023 and fix those issues. So hoping they make some changes, and hoping they can continue being a great branding for the sport and fix themselves going into the future, because Fox used to be the golden standard of coverage back in the day, but now they haven't really been the golden coverage, and hopefully they can fix their problems heading into 2023. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Trackhouse Racing. There was something that was announced yesterday that was really, really huge. It was reported by Adam Stern and multiple outlets yesterday that Justin Marks has raised 7 figures in private equity to launch a new division called Trackhouse 360, a content event company focused on American racing. The goal of this, according to Adam Stern, is that Marks just returned from the Middle East, where he was looking into possible exhibitions. It was also announced that Dean Sawyer, who's had a lot of work with the Phoenix Suns and was a CMO of the Phoenix Suns, he'll be running this operation. This is really, really huge, because when you look at Justin Marks and how innovative Justin Marks has been for NASCAR as a whole, it's been absolutely incredible. In the last year or two, he's taken Trackhouse Racing to major steps. They've also become one of the fastest organizations in NASCAR. Also, they announced Project 91, and that's been successful. You got a lot of drivers that are showing really, really big interest. They've also got Pitbull running the organization as well as a co-owner of the organization as well. But they are also talking about exhibitions in different countries, which is really, really interesting that they're talking about adding some exhibition races, because, again, there's a lot of talk about exhibition racing. We talked about this about 2 or 3 weeks ago, that there's a lot of talk of NASCAR, well, a lot of these teams basically doing an exhibition series in different countries, in different racing forms as well. Justin Marks has also shown interest in maybe running an IndyCar and also racing in other series like the Sports Car Series in IMSA and maybe the FIA WEC, the World Endurance Championship, as well. When I think of Trackhouse Racing and all the stuff that's going on at the team, I think that he is one of the most innovative owners and one of the most innovative teams in the last few years. And I think a lot of these owners that are coming in the new ownership, they're going to be, if they don't make the changes that they're going to need to make, they're going to fall behind and fall by the wayside. So in my honest opinion, when it comes to this, I really think it hope these teams continue to show their progress in whatever they're doing and continue doing things like similar to what Justin Marks is doing. This Trackhouse 360 is going to be huge, I think, for the sport. And I really hope that we can see some people come to that talent agency. And I hope the Trackhouse go to IndyCar and go to other forms of racing. But their team is setting themselves up for some big moments. And you remember Ross Chastain's Hail Melon thing. That was on Trackhouse Racing as well. But I think that this team is really setting themselves up for a really amazing and really bright future. And you look at this team and the company and everything that they're doing right now, I think it's absolutely huge, absolutely incredible. And I'm excited to see they've got a new thing called Trackhouse 360 going into 2023. It's really exciting news, and I cannot wait to see what is in store for this Trackhouse 360 group heading into 2023. It's really exciting, and I'm looking forward to see what comes out of it heading into 2023. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of 2 major stories in today's episode, as we're talking about Jeffrey Earnhardt. As it was announced yesterday that Jeffrey Earnhardt will drive the 44 for Alpha Prime Racing full-time in 2023, with Forever Long backing as a sponsor for Jeffrey Earnhardt throughout the whole entire 2023 season. This will be the first time that Jeffrey Earnhardt has been full-time in any of NASCAR's top 3 divisions since 2014. Now, Jeffrey Earnhardt, we look at Jeffrey Earnhardt. A lot of people are going to look at him and ask if he's a pay driver or not. while maybe some will say he's a paid driver, Jeffrey has had to work for a lot of stuff throughout his career. And like I said, this is the first time he's been full-time in nearly 9 seasons. Now, it's no secret that Jimmie Johnson has not had the greatest career in NASCAR ever. He really hasn't had a lot of great statistics throughout his career, but he's a driver that hasn't ran for a lot of fast organizations. You look at Alpha Prime Racing as a whole, that team has showed a lot of improvement, especially in the last year or so. Really, throughout the second half of the year, they're really starting to improve and run up front. Remember, at the beginning of the year, they were failing to qualify a lot of races. But when they had guys like Roger Kroof on the team and other drivers on the team, like Sage Karam, they're running up front a lot more consistently and doing very, very good. Now, what are my expectations for Jeffrey Earnhardt heading into 2023? Well, I think Jeffrey will have a lot of good runs next year. I think Alpha Prime is going to improve heading into 2023. I think that Jeffrey is going to run up front and get a lot of maybe top 15s and a lot of top 20s and maybe a couple occasional top 10s. But also, I think he'll be contender in the Super Speedway races as well. Remember last year, Talladega, or earlier this year, Talladega, he drove that 3 car where he had Larry McGrano as the crew chief and Mike Dillon as a spotter, and of course him in the 3. He ended up finishing second and nearly ended up winning that race. I think what's going on, though, is this is a huge move for Jeffrey, and I think this is going to be really big for Alpha Prime. Now let's talk about something else as well. Alpha Prime is apparently in conversation to have a 3rd car in 2023 as well. Obviously, we know that the 45 car will have Ryan Ellis for 15 races and Sage Karam for about 15 or 16 races as well. The goal is for that to be almost a full-time entry of both those guys. They're talking about having a 3rd car as well. Unclear what the number will be. Maybe the 42 car, maybe the 43 car could be the number they end up having. So it would make sense for 43, 44, 45. And they're talking about adding a couple drivers, that being Stephen Parsons, who drove for Alpha Prime Racing, and also having Roger Kroof make a couple select starts as well. I think Alpha Prime Racing is setting themselves up for a bright future. But transitioning back over to Jeffrey Earnhardt, I think this is a really, really fantastic move for the team as a whole to bring a driver in like Jeffrey Earnhardt, who has a lot of experience in NASCAR, and bring someone in who has a lot of that experience. I think Jeffrey will have a really strong year in 2023. And like I said, if you're a fan of Jeffrey Earnhardt, you got to be really, really excited for him as a whole. I'm glad he's full-time. I know a lot of teams were in conversations enter and try to get him because of that forever law money. I think Sam Racing was one of those teams. Granted, they got Connor Mosak now on that team for 20 races, but I think Jeffrey going full-time with Alpha Prime Racing, I think it's a really, really big move for him, and I'm excited to see that Jeffrey will be full-time in 2023. Wishing the best of luck. Hope he has a really strong season in 2023, and I think he's going to have a really great and good year heading into the 2023 season. Really excited to see what he's going to do, and hopefully he can do really good with the Alpha Prime Racing Group heading into the 2023 season. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about Kaulig Racing. Now, we haven't talked much about Daytona 500 in the last couple days, but it sounds like we're going to have more entries than we initially thought heading into 2023 for the season, including in Kaulig Racing. Now, according to Door Bumper Clear podcast, at the 26-minute mark, Brett Griffin, who works at Kaulig Racing, he confirmed he will not be a full-time spotter in 2023, so will not be spotting for Justin Haley. But he basically confirmed that it will basically be for the 3rd entry in 2023 for Kaulig Racing. He'll be a spotter for a part-time 3rd car in 2023. Now, this is something new in developments because I did not expect that Kaulig would have a 3rd car, but Kaulig is known to have some big moves they've made. You look at what the team did in 2022. They had 2 full-time entries where they had 1 all-star car and 1 full-time entry. Now in 2023, they're going to have AJ Allmendinger in the 16 and Justin Haley in the 31 car. This 3rd car, unclear what the number would be, but this would expand the field also for the Daytona 500 as well, because we already know at this point a couple of the entries. Let's talk about, though, who could be in these cars for 2023. So there's 3 drivers, obviously, in the Xfinity Series. You have Chandler Smith, who's driving the 16, Landon Cassill's driving the 10, and Daniel Hemrick, who is driving the 11. My bet would be between Landon Cassill and Daniel Hemrick. A lot of you are asking, why not Chandler Smith? Well, I don't think Chandler Smith is going to drive in Cup at all next year. I think Chandler Smith is going to focus on racing full-time in Xfinity. Maybe in 2024, if AJ decides to retire, maybe he gets to call up to the 2nd Kaulig car, the 16. But I don't see that ending up being the case. I think it comes down to between Landon Cassill and Daniel Hemrick for the ride. My bet would be Daniel Hemrick because Daniel Hemrick, though, has a lot of funding in the sponsorship. Landon, while he is in that ride at the 10 car, I don't know if he'll have an opportunity because, again, Voyager basically went bankrupt, so I don't see Landon Castle getting the opportunity. I think it is going to be Daniel Hemrick driving this car. So my prediction is it's going to be Daniel Hemrick driving the number, whatever is maybe the 61 car, but that would be where he'd run. Also, big question is how many races will this car run? I would think maybe around 10 to 11 races. And maybe we do see a split number of drivers drive this car, but I don't know if that will end up happening. And now the big question is the number of cars entering the Daytona 500 because we are starting to get closer to Daytona 500. Obviously, we know that we're going to see a third promo car with Zane Smith. We know that Jimmie Johnson will entering 5 or 6 races next year. We know that Beard Motorsports is confirmed with Austin Hill. We also do know that there's a lot of conversations around Julio Castroneves, maybe run the Project 91 car or running with the Money Team. There's also talk that the Money Team may have Connor Daly enter. And you also now have this new organization. And then you have Rich Schultz Racing maybe entering a third car part-time. Maybe Kurt Busch could enter the 97 car. We know that Kurt Busch is not officially retired from NASCAR. He's just currently at the moment not racing full-time in NASCAR at the end of 2022. Basically not running full-time anymore. The big question now with this Kaulig Racing news is how many cars do I think will enter the 500? I predict that we're going to see maybe around 45, 43, 44 cars, but we may end up seeing more. We may end up seeing the largest Daytona 500 field we've seen in a very long time, which I think that's the goal of the next gen car is have more entries every single week. And it's good to see we're seeing more entries. And you think about some of these other teams that could show up as well. 3F Racing, they're going to run 8-10 races next year. We know that Haysbers could run 2 cars. We know the NBM could enter 2 cars in Daytona 500. I think they'll enter 1, but they may enter 2 cars. There's a lot of talk, conversation behind the scenes, and a lot of big moves that are going on right now. And I think that we're going to see a lot of entries in 2023, and there's just a lot of excitement in the air for the future of everything. And I cannot wait to see the Daytona 500. Of course, today's Founders Day, which is the 75th year of NASCAR. And 2023 is just right around the corner, and we're getting really close to Daytona 500. Just a lot of excitement around the air, and Kaulig Racing expanding. Again, I don't know how many races this car will run, probably maybe around 10 races, but it's good to see that Kaulig Racing will be entering a third car next year on a part-time basis. Helps the field grow a little bit, and I think we're going to see a lot more full 40-car fields, which I think is really, really exciting. So great news for sure, and good to see the Kaulig expected to expand heading into 2023. So, that is today's long NASCAR news and motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel, notifications on, to be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Let's go jump over that and comment your thoughts on today's video. Do you think that Kaulig will enter the third car officially or not? Let me know in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about all the other stories Scott we talked about in today's episode, including Jeffrey Earnhardt driving for Alpha Prime Racing? Let me know in the comments below. Tomorrow on my channel, I should have the Suros Racing team preview on the channel. And Friday, if we do have enough NASCAR news on the channel, we are going to do a NASCAR news video. Or if not, we may end up doing maybe a paint scheme video looking at all the paint schemes for 2023. Or I might do another silly season update on the channel. I'll put a poll out to basically ask what you guys want on the channel. So anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode. And I'll see you guys next time for some more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.